Dear friends, this is a story of three sages and a widowed woman who was immersed in darkness. This is a very old tale. There was a village named Aman Nagar. This village was surrounded by mountains and dense forests. The people here were simple and mostly farmers. They made their living through farming. Although the village was called Aman Nagar, there was less peace and more bitterness. The village was trapped in superstition and social rituals. In this very village lived a woman named Ramsha. Ramsha was a widow. It had been 3 years since her husband passed away. When her husband Akram died from illness, Ramsha's life was left with nothing but tears and taunts. Akram was an ordinary farmer in the village. Their house was small, but it was filled with love and mutual understanding between them. But as soon as Akram passed away, Ramsha's world sank into darkness. The villagers started considering her an unlucky woman. The women of the village began avoiding sitting and talking with her. Men showered her with taunts and insults. Children were told not to even go near Ramsha's house. Every morning when Ramsha went to fetch water from the village well, the women would whisper among themselves, "Look, here comes the cursed one, whose steps always bring misfortune." Ramsha tried many times to ignore these taunts, but their words kept piercing her heart like thorns. Nights were even harder for her. When the whole village slept deeply, Ramsha would sit in her courtyard and look up at the sky. The moonlight would bring tears to her eyes. She would often light a lamp in front of her husband's photo, cry, and ask God, "What sin have I committed that my life has become hell?" Many times, she thought about leaving the village, but where would she go? Her parents had passed away long ago. Her brothers and sisters had turned away from her the moment she became a widow. One day, as Ramsha sat outside her broken hut, she saw 3 sages walking on the path outside the village. They had white beards and wore saffron robes. There was a glow on their faces, but a strange secret glimmered in their eyes. As soon as the villagers saw the sages, they surrounded them. Everyone touched their feet and asked for blessings. The village head pleaded with the sages, "Maharaj, kindly stay in our village for a few days. We need your blessings." The sages agreed to stay in the village, but then their eyes fell on Ramsha. The oldest sage among them looked at Ramsha and said, "This woman is surrounded by sorrow, but her destiny holds something unique." The villagers were stunned to hear this. They couldn't believe that the same Ramsha they called cursed could have something special in her fate. Ramsha herself was astonished. Questions rose in her heart. Who are these sages, and why are they speaking of my destiny this way? The 3 sages stayed in an old temple in the middle of the village, which was called Waguru Mandir. This temple had been abandoned for years, but with the arrival of the sages, life returned to it. Villagers came daily to see them and hear their voices. Ramsha, too, stood outside the temple listening to the sages, but the villagers wouldn't let her go inside. One day, while everyone was listening to a sermon, the eldest sage said, "Every person faces sorrow in life, but only the one who discovers the secret hidden within can change their destiny." Ramsha felt something strange hearing this. She started wondering, can I rid myself of sorrow? Can I change my destiny? Who were these sages? Conquering fear. Early next morning, Ramsha reached the banyan tree near the forest. The three sages were standing there. They were deep in meditation. There was a strange silence around them. Ramsha joined her hands in greeting and said, "I have come, Maharaj. Now tell me, what is my test?" Vidyanan opened his eyes and said, "Daughter, this world is an illusion. Whoever understands it changes their destiny. But before we give you knowledge, you must face your test." Amalnanda said, "We are leaving you here in this forest. You must stay here alone through the night. This forest is full of secrets. There are wild animals here, and also unseen forces. But if you let go of your fear, you will pass the first test." Ramsha was shocked to hear this. Alone in the forest all night? She was terrified. But she gathered courage and said, "I am ready." The three sages smiled and said, "We will return here tomorrow morning after sunrise. Until then, you must stay alone." Saying this, the three sages walked toward the other end of the forest, and Ramsha was left alone. As evening fell, darkness spread across the forest. Strange sounds began echoing all around. An owl hooted on a tree in the distance. Rustling came from the bushes. Ramsha steadied her heart and sat under a tree, but as the night deepened, the fear grew stronger. Suddenly, she felt like shadows were moving toward her. Her heart began pounding loudly. Is it a wild animal or a ghost? But just then, she remembered the words of the sages. If you let go of your fear, you will pass the first test. The first ray of morning and success. As soon as the first ray of sunlight touched the forest, Ramsha breathed a sigh of relief. A short while later, the three sages arrived and saw Ramsha smiling. Vidyanan said, "Daughter, you have passed your first test. You have conquered fear. Now a great change is about to come in your life." There was a sparkle of hope in Ramsha's eyes. She had understood that fear only lives in our hearts, and when we face it, it vanishes on its own. Ramsha's first victory. After spending a fear-filled night in the forest, Ramsha's eyes no longer held fear, but confidence. When the first ray of sunlight filtered through the branches onto her face, she felt more peaceful and stronger than ever. The three sages were smiling. Vidyanan said, "Daughter, you have passed the first test. Now, you are ready for the second one." Ramsha bowed humbly and said, "I am ready, Maharaj." The secret of the three sages. The three sages took Ramsha to an old temple built on a hilltop, which was called Dev Mandir. The temple looked plain, but a strange energy could be felt there. As soon as Ramsha stepped onto the threshold of the temple, she felt a slight tremble through her body. Just then, Murakbanan said, "Now, the time has come for us to tell you our true reality." Ramsha was surprised. "Your true reality?" Vidyanan closed his eyes, and suddenly a bright light began to shine from his body. In the same way, Amalanand and Murakbanand also began to glow with light. Within moments, standing before her were not ordinary humans, but three divine forms. They were deities. Ramsha kept watching in amazement. She couldn't say a word. Amalanand said, "We are not ordinary sages, daughter. We are the incarnations of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, and we have come to this earth for a special purpose. Murakbanand added, "We were commanded to test someone who truly wishes to change their destiny, and we chose you." Tears came into Ramsha's eyes. Now she understood that these sages were not ordinary men. The second test, sacrifice and surrender. Vidyan and said, "You have conquered fear, but now you must pass another test, the test of sacrifice." Ramsha asked, "What will I have to sacrifice?" Amalanand said, "You will have to give up the thing you love the most, the thing you are most attached to." Ramsha fell into thought. She didn't have much anyway. But then she remembered her husband's photograph. After Akram's death, that was the only thing that kept her going. Whenever she was sad, she would look at that photo and remember her husband. She softly asked, "Will I have to let go of my husband's picture?" Murakbanand replied, "If that is the thing you love most, then yes. But remember, true sacrifice is only when it is done from the heart. If you are not ready for this test, we will not force you." A conflict began in Ramsha's heart. Could she let go of the last sign of her husband? She thought for a while and then said, "If it is necessary to change my life, then I am ready." The three sages smiled. Vidyan said, "Then go and let your most beloved thing float away in the village pond." The photograph was kept in an old chest. With trembling hands, she picked it up and started walking towards the pond. Some villagers were watching her do this. They whispered among themselves, "She's gone mad now. Why is she throwing away her husband's picture?" But Ramsha paid no attention to their words. She gently let the picture float in the water. As soon as the picture sank into the water, she felt that all the burden in her heart had also been absorbed by the water. Now, she felt light and free. The second test, success. As soon as she returned to the forest, the three sages were standing there. Vidyan said, "Daughter, you have passed the test of sacrifice too. You are now free from the bond that tied you to your past." Ramsha now truly began to feel that her life was changing. Murakbanand said, "Now, your final and most difficult test remains." Ramsha bowed her head. "I am ready, Maharaj." The third and most difficult test. Ramsha had passed the tests of fear and sacrifice. Now, she felt stronger and more confident than ever before. But she didn't know that her most difficult test was still to come. The three sages were standing inside the Dev Mandir. When Ramsha reached there, Vidyan said in a serious tone, "Daughter, now the time has come for your final test." Ramsha bowed her head and said, "I am ready, Maharaj." Murakbanand said, "This test is a test of your soul. You must prove that you can live not just for yourself, but for others too." Ramsha asked in surprise, "What will I have to do?" Amalanand said, "There is an old woman in the village who has no one to care for her. She is hungry and ill. You must give her all your food and your hut, and then you must go into the forest and meditate for 7 days without food or water." Hearing this, Ramsha hesitated. Give up my home and food, and then meditate for 7 days without eating or drinking? This test was harder than all her previous ones. Conflict of the heart. The image of her hut appeared before Ramsha's eyes. That home was her last support. If she gave it up, where would she go? But then she remembered the words of the sages. If you pass this test, your life will completely change. Ramsha looked deep inside herself and made a decision. All right, Maharaj, I am ready to do this. Letting go of everything, Ramsha returned to the village and gave her hut to the old woman. She also handed over her remaining food to her. The villagers were astonished to see this. What is she doing? Why is she giving up everything? But Ramsha didn't listen to anyone. She went straight towards the forest, where she had to meditate for 7 days. The difficult 7-day meditation. The first day passed, and Ramsha felt intense hunger, but she did not let her focus waver. She closed her eyes and began chanting the mantras given by the sages. On the second day, thirst tormented her, but she gave up the desire for water too, and sank deeper into meditation. On the third day, her body started to weaken, but she didn't give up. On the fourth day, she felt that she couldn't bear it anymore, but just then, she remembered the sage's words. True strength doesn't lie in the body, it lies in the heart. On the fifth and sixth days, she became fully absorbed in meditation. Now, she didn't even feel hunger or thirst. On the seventh day, when the sun rose, something extraordinary happened. Ramsha's soul was filled with a new energy. She felt as though she was no longer an ordinary woman, but connected to a divine power. Ramsha's transformation. When the seventh day was complete, the 3 sages appeared before her. Vidyan and said, "Daughter, you have passed your final test. You are no longer an ordinary woman, but a powerful soul." Amalanand said, "You can not only change your own destiny, but also the destiny of others." Murakbanan raised his hands and said, "We bless you that from now on, your life will be filled with joy, peace, and respect." Around Ramsha, a golden light began to spread. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she felt more peaceful, stronger, and more radiant than ever before. Return to the village and respect. When Ramsha returned to the village, the villagers were stunned to see her. She was no longer a sorrowful woman. There was a divine light on her face. There was confidence in her eyes. The same villagers who once looked down on her now came to her and touched her feet. They began to say, "Forgive us. We insulted you. But now we understand that you are not an ordinary woman." Ramsha smiled and said, "True strength is not on the outside. It is within us. When we let go of our fears, our attachments, and our ego, then we truly become free." After Ramsha returned to the village, the hearts of the people of Amannagar began to change. The light on her face, the truth in her words, and the strength of her character amazed everyone. But for Ramsha, this was just a new beginning. The blessings of the 3 sages had awakened a power within her, which was no longer limited to just her own life. She had understood that her real strength lay in helping others. One morning, when Ramsha was sitting near her hut, some village children came to her and said, "Ramsha auntie, please tell us the secret that made you so strong." Ramsha smiled and said, "There is no magic in the secret, children. It's just about keeping your heart pure and doing something for others." The innocent eyes of the children touched Ramsha's heart. She decided that she would teach the children of the village through her experiences. Ramsha started a small madrasa near the Waguru temple. This madrasa was not a formal school, but a place where she taught children the lessons of life. She told them how to conquer fear, how to break the chains of the heart, and how to purify the soul by helping others. Along with the children, some women of the village also began to come to her. They said to Ramsha, "We also want to change our lives, but we don't know how to begin." Ramsha would tell them her story and say, "There is a hidden power inside everyone. It just takes courage to find it." Soon, Ramsha's little gathering became an important part of the village. People began to call it Ramsha's Light. The villagers saw that Ramsha's words not only changed hearts, but also changed the atmosphere of the village. The women who once envied each other now began helping one another. The men who once mocked Ramsha now began to respect her. Even the elders of the village, who had always followed strict traditions, began to come to Ramsha's madrasa to listen to her. One day, a great crisis came to the village. Near Aman Nagar, there was a river that changed its course every monsoon. This year, the rains were so heavy that the river's water began to move toward the village. Fear spread among the villagers. Some people started running away with their belongings, while others locked themselves inside their homes. Ramsha saw all of this, and in her heart, she felt the same strength she had found during her 7 days of meditation in the forest. She gathered the villagers and said, "We do not need to be afraid. If we all work together, we can stop this river." There was such power in Ramsha's voice that the villagers listened to her. She united the men, the women, and even the children of the village. Some people began piling mud near the riverbanks. Some collected stones, and some tried to build a barrier using ropes. Ramsha herself was at the front. She lifted mud piles, carried stones, and encouraged everyone. The villagers worked together throughout the night, and by morning, they had diverted the river's water away from the village. When the sun rose, the villagers saw that their village was safe. Everyone looked at Ramsha and thanked her in loud voices. After this incident, Ramsha became a symbol of Aman Nagar. Many people began calling her the Light of Aman. The villagers apologized to her for once considering her unlucky. Ramsha laughed and said, "There is no need to apologize. Everyone has a time in life when they realize their mistakes. What matters is that now we are together." Ramsha now dedicated her life to a new purpose. She decided that she would not only inspire Aman Nagar, but also the people of the neighboring villages. She visited other villages, met the people there, and shared her experiences. Listening to her, people began trying to change their own lives. Some women started small madrasas in their homes, where they shared the lessons taught by Ramsha. Some men began working together to solve the problems of their villages. Ramsha's story became a movement, which spread from Aman Nagar across the whole region. One night, when Ramsha was sitting in the courtyard of her new home, a house built for her by the villagers, she saw 3 stars shining in the sky. The stars were glowing so brightly that Ramsha felt as if Vidyanan, Amalanan, and Murakbanan were watching her. She joined her hands and said in her heart, "Maharaj, your blessings have filled my life with light. Now I will spread this light to others." At that very moment, a cool breeze passed by, and Ramsha felt as if the 3 sages had heard her. Time went on, and Ramsha's story continued to spread generation after generation. Aman Nagar was no longer the village that was drowned in superstition and bitterness. It became a place where people helped one another, respected one another, and tried to improve their lives. Ramsha's life, which was once filled with sorrow and taunts, now became a story that gave courage and hope to everyone. She proved that true strength is not just in letting go of fear and attachment, but in living for others,